I really just enjoy riding my bike and running in the hills, and enjoying the process and journey to these events. And Celtman in particular is very special, because it's a very family event and everyone feels really welcome and the atmosphere is really special. And actually, from the Celtman this year, I've met some of my best friends from Celtman. So yeah, it's a great place and a great environment and a great community.
So just the general kind of what we want to achieve from tonight, I guess, is probably that is, you can see the outcome slide. Oh, somebody's.
Okay, so
you guys seeing the presentation view, is that right? We can change that. I guess it doesn't make a big difference, but change. Let me stop share. There's always going to be some technical issues.
I think we're doing pretty well so far. So.
That one, yeah. I can hear it well.
So you have to be here to see the real thing.
Where can you?
Let me just cancel that. 2 seconds. That should be. Just choose the presentation mode. At least the Wi-Fi is working. It wasn't working earlier, so we're.
Start share screen.
No, it's that screen. I need to share it.
So I guess while Kevin is playing about with the screen, I'm just going to say some general things about just before the event, and the day before the event in particular. It's really exciting. You'll be very nervous, and maybe struggling to get to sleep. And one of a really big thing for me this year that I learned is that, well, I didn't sleep at all the night before, and I was getting more and more stressed. Oh my goodness, I've not slept. And actually, when I went to check in, I said to my dad, I've not slept at all. How on earth will I be able to do this? But actually, if you don't have one night's sleep, you'll be fine. You make sure you sleep well the week before and the night before the event. It doesn't matter if you can't sleep. It doesn't matter if you get no sleep at all. Just try and get some rest and not stress about it too much. And that was a big thing for me this year, because I definitely stressed about it. So it was a big learning for me. Time in the morning when you get up, you bring your bike to transition. One thing, don't leave anything to the morning. You won't have any time. The time disappears really quickly, and all of a sudden you have to be on the bus. So make sure the night before you've got everything sorted and you're not leaving anything until the next morning. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Hopefully that's better, guys. If not, we'll just carry on. It's kind of if you see the next slide coming up, there's nothing secret in there, so it shouldn't be an issue. But yeah. So yeah, starting with the swim. So it's an early start. If you haven't done it, it's you're in the water at 5, so you're technically leaving transition area kind of 4 o'clock, provided you don't miss the bus. Don't miss the bus is probably a key important thing. It's another stress that I think I've only heard of 1 or 2 people doing it, but yeah, you don't want to be getting someone to drive you around to the swim start and race morning. Yeah, swim start early. That's a key thing, and something I think just getting used to getting up that early and being prepared to eat at 2, 3 in the morning is a bit of a skill, but something you want to probably practice a couple of times before race day. But
you don't need to practice it. I never practiced it.
But something with the swim, which I'm sure Eilidh can speak about, and I'm sure people who've done the race know what it's like, but it's cold water is probably one of the biggest issues. Jellyfish infested. I'm sure if you've read stuff on the forum or seen some of the videos, there's quite a few of them, and usually all the time you'll swim through them. It's possibly choppy because it is obviously tidal as well, so it can get kind of mixed. It can be with or against you, and I think that's where you see year on year some of the times vary quite dramatically, and that's something you just have to get used to. Certainly getting into some choppy swim in cold water is key thing.
Yeah, so also really important is to have a neoprene hat, or I have this hood thing. I bought mine off Amazon, but Total Endurance supply them as well, and I would recommend getting it from there.
It's £5.
And it's really good for the cold, but also for the jellyfish. It gives you that extra protection. Definitely getting into cold water before the race. You do not have to swim 3K. You don't even have to swim half of the distance, but just get into some cold water for 15 to 20 minutes. I would say maybe 5 times before the race day, that's going to make an absolutely massive difference. And if you're warm climate and you can't do that, cold showers, cold baths, use your imagination. This is a cold float. So that's how you have to think about it. It's not really like swimming. It's being put somewhere really cold and floating to the next transition, hopefully. The tide is issue. Okay, so you get out of the transition. And one thing Kevin said today, which I don't have a problem with because I'm kind of luckily well built, that I keep the warmth in very well. But if you're tall and thin or have a lighter build, then you will get cold very quickly. So it's important to think of a strategy with your support team prior to getting out. What's that going to look like when you're running into transition? What's the first thing you're focused on? Is it your support team giving you coffee, or is it them getting the clothes off straight away? Have this thought about before so that you know in your head, you don't have this anxiety or panic when you're getting into transition. It's okay, first of all, we do this, we do that, and then off for the 200k bike ride.
Yeah, I'll just quickly mention on the swim as well, just so the kind of left image, if you're not familiar, is just above the kind of swim start, kind of from the roads from Google. In the first island that you see on the right image, just kind of at the top kind of left of this image on the right, is the first island that you kind of swim round. And you're kind of heading to where on this left image again, where that big hill is. That's kind of Shieldaig just at the other side, which obviously comes out round the island. If you can get up there and see some of it, it's definitely worth doing. But even just swimming out to this big island from the Shieldaig beach is worth doing, and just getting an image of what it looks like on that last 300-400 meters.
Yeah, and another thing to say about the sighting, I've never been able to see the White House that you can apparently see to sight ever. So if you can't see where you're going, then don't panic. There's kayaks to keep you there. Just follow the crowd.
Yeah, and something to guess probably quite useful is to follow that island round on race day a little bit further than maybe what you think. If you follow it round, it's a lot easier to see where the swim exit is. I think a lot of people end up swimming straight for some of the houses that are on the kind of corner, and they end up kind of swimming a lot further. So yeah, we've got through transitions. This is just a general thing. If you're not from Scotland, or I think Anthony last year, who's here, when we went over to Recce Solo Point 5 route, had never met a Midji before. He soon figured out how bad they are. Something I'd recommend, even for the days leading in, make sure you're protected from them. But your support crew should probably wear something similar, because they're pretty relentless, and probably the race is easier compared to standing for a couple of hours in Midji's.
Yeah, agreed.
So yeah, make sure your support crew are covered in Midji nets and spray. So the bike, so obviously we're not going to go into every single component of the bike and the course in general. We'd be here all night and otherwise. Just some key things. So Eilidh will kind of allude to some key things on the bike. But one thing to note, it's a rule, is you're not allowed to have support until you've got past Kinloch Shieldaig, which is about 30k in from swim exit. So your support crew aren't going to be there for that first. And that's something with nutrition, with kit. You want to make sure you're covered for at least the first hour, potentially the first hour and a half. And something with that I would recommend is, as soon as you're out the water and clear of transition, support crews should fairly quickly get organised and leave to head towards Kinloch Shieldaig, because there's going to be a lot of other cars on the road. There's going to be people's vans, whatnot, and other cyclists. They're probably going to get held up, and likewise, you're probably going to get held up, which is something we've kind of put there. Is certainly if you're a mid-pack to kind of towards the back of the pack swimmer, expect you are going to get held up with the traffic of the swimmers that came out in front of you. But don't get caught up in trying to race through and take kind of unnecessary risk. It's the first hour, get into the bike ride nice and easy. It's a long day, so if you end up getting caught up, getting annoyed because you're stuck behind 3 vans or 3 cyclists that are stuck behind 3 vans, don't worry about it. It's kind of such a small component of the day.
Okay, so just going on from what Kevin said about the traffic and your support team being stuck, don't get stressed if you've agreed to meet somewhere and your support team aren't there. They are trying to get to you. The first year I did it, my support team weren't where I thought they would be, and I really let that get to me. Where are they? And I was kind of panicking, and it's just a waste of energy. So just, you may have agreed to meet somewhere before Gearloch's Day, but they might just be in traffic, and they will get to you. So don't let that panic you. The second thing is, I've done it with road bike and TT bars, and I've done it with a time trial bike. So if you don't have a time trial bike, it's not the end of the world. You don't need to go and buy the most expensive bike. I would recommend some time trial bars because they definitely make a difference. But it's about doing the training, and this Celtman isn't about having the best equipment and the best bike, although I do have a time trial bike now. But you can do it without one. So don't be panicking if you turn up and you don't have the best bike or you don't have the best equipment. It doesn't matter. It's not really, in the end of the day, I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference. Kevin maybe disagrees, but anyway, moving on.
Yeah, they're not needing another bikes, only if your partners are listening.
And nutrition, we're going to come back to that at the end because there has been a few questions on it. So we'll come back to nutrition at the end.
Yeah, we'll cover that kind of separately. Just one part of the course, I mean, obviously it's, if you can get up and wreck it or at least drive around it, highly recommend doing so. But if you can't, Google is pretty good. To be honest, it's covered pretty much the whole course now. So you can pretty much follow Google. It takes a few hours to do, having personally done it, to find out where some of the hills are, where the corners are. But there's nothing on the course that's crazy in reality. It's just going to be a long day out. But if you can't wreck it, certainly get up on Google and spend a bit of time just
understanding it. And I didn't manage to recce the Norseman route last year, but I did spend hours on Google Earth going through it and breaking it up into small chunks. And what I did was I wrote different places and how far they were on the course, and I stuck that to what's that bar on your bike called? That's the one. Somewhere on my bike that I could see it, just to refer to it at some point during the day. So Google works as well if you can't get here to recce it.
Yeah, and then just something we've kind of added in, this is probably a key component of the race that I think a lot of people don't expect to take as long as it does. So this is the right turn at guard. First thing I would say, don't keep going straight or you're heading towards Dingwall and Inverness Way. It's going to be longer. It's about 160k, and it's pretty much the last 40 odd k to the bike leg. 40k doesn't maybe sound that long, but it's longer than what you think it's going to take. And from that, I would suggest though as well as your sport crew start heading there soon after this point. You can still have a stop along the way, but again, you don't want your sport crew to be behind you as you get closer to transition.
Yeah. So on the support crew, this is your support crew's most important job of the day. Last year, there were people that got to T2 and their support crew didn't get there in time, and they were waiting for your support crew. So if you're a support crew and you're watching, you're listening, this is the most important job. Make sure you get there early. Make sure you have the stuff ready. They're not going to need you in that last bit. Well, they shouldn't need you. To go back to if you're not a sport crew and you are doing this, mentally in my head, I treat this as a 2-hour turbo. You don't want to do it. It's really early morning or it's really dark outside. You cannot be asked, but you get on your bike and you do it anyway, and you're kind of in your zone. So for this, it's just keeping one pedal stroke at the other, and there's a huge amount of mental toughness. And if the wind is as bad as last year, you might feel like you're going backwards, but you will get there. So just break it down, have that, be prepared mentally. This is going to be 2 hours. It's going to be longer than I think, and you'll get through it. And then you just got to run a marathon over some mountains after that.
I guess there's one noticeable kind of key point on the course that the kind of last descent is quite famous. There's a lot of images. You didn't really look down all the way to Loch Shieldaig. It's a nice downhill, but unfortunately you have to enjoy it. But if it's like last year and the year before and probably the year before that, it's probably a headwind as you descend down that. So you'll probably be pedaling quite hard to go not very fast down what should be quite a nice, fun, non-technical descent. But be prepared for that last descent to potentially not be as enjoyable. I think last year was, I think there was people going sideways down it, and a few people were coming off their bike, but a few people had to get off their bike because of the wind. So bear in mind, it might be very windy on that section, and you're already going to be quite tired. So bear in mind that that's it.
Yeah, and that's another thing. If you've got a disc wheel, or that's kind of you've got a bike to that standard, that's maybe something you want to think about having an alternative, because I think there was maybe one person with a disc wheel last year, but it was not disc wheel riding conditions. So that's something just to bear in mind.
Yeah. And then Kinloch is obviously T2, so you will have cycled past this road to start the bike leg. And the transition area is just where you can kind of see those cars. You'll kind of dismount just outside where that white car is. And what Eilidh mentioned a little bit there is that it can be quite congested, it probably will be quite congested in reality, with cyclists and with people standing there cheering. I think there's a guy with the bagpipes as well, if I remember right. But the car park to get from transition back to your car is about 1 kilometre away, and your support crew is going to need to park and then get back down that kilometre. So what I was saying with after Garve or soon after Garve, getting them to head somewhere close to here, because then they're going to be ready in transition and you're not going to have to sit there waiting for them to get back with your run kit. Obviously, they can take as much time after that as they want, but you don't want them to be running up the road. And a few people were quite panicked last year. I've seen some fast run splits along that road trying to get to T2 for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously now we've made it to the run. Woohoo!
And we are rattling through this a bit because we want to leave lots of time at the end for questions. So yeah, it's not going to take you 20 minutes to get to the run if you can't, for sure.
So we've kind of split this into the two main parts of Celtman. Obviously, there's the low and the high route, but we'll kind of just chat a little bit through this. So you've got left side is the first run, so from T2 to T2A. And the second bit's the kind of high route, the mountain section that we're all kind of trying to get there on time for. The first bit, and probably Eilidh's probably better versed on this, I think a lot of people almost negate it, think, right, it's just the first run. The high route's the most important bit. If you're chasing time, if you're getting to the cutoff is going to be potentially a problem, knowing this route inside out can save you quite a bit of time. And I know a few people have got lost, certainly down at the bottom here where they missed the right turn along the hydro and they lost about 20, 30 minutes. Fine if you're plenty of time. If you're 10, 15 minutes either side of that cutoff, you don't want to be making mistakes there. So I'd highly recommend tracking that as best you can, either wrecking it or certainly making sure you know that route. Even put the route into your Garmin can be quite useful on race day.
Yeah, so if you do have your route into your Garmin, also make sure it might not be completely right. It could send you somewhere else, so bear that in mind as well. Most people's goal is to get the blue t-shirt, so most people are only really thinking about this first half of the run. And for me, I think it's really important to get my mindset into running trail running and scouting out how are my feet moving. So in your progression or training up to this, it's really important to incorporate some hill running or trail running or whatever off-road running that you can find on uneven surfaces. That's probably going to be more beneficial than doing a fast 10K or even doing some hard intervals. It is different running on surfaces like this. This first half of the run is not flat at all, and some of the surface is really challenging. It's boggy and it's not something that they say it's a path. It's not really a path. So just really bear that in mind when you're thinking about your training and where you're allocating how you're running. If you can find places to run off-road and on challenging surfaces, that's going to really help you here.
I guess something to allude to, something you mentioned about in the video, how you felt on that first run. Yes.
So this year, when I first did it, I felt really good. And I don't know if that was just from using a road bike or I don't know why. But this year, I felt really awful on the first part of the run. And I was actually thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can do this. And I was lacking confidence and almost panicking a bit. And then I got into the mindset where I managed to just accept, okay, I feel really bad, but I can still move one step. I can still move the next step. And I was just really breaking it down. I also had my support crew running the first section of the run with me this year, which they didn't do the year before. And it was really, really helpful. So that's something that I definitely would advise. I know some people don't like it or they would prefer to be on their own, but you don't know how you're feeling. And at the day, you might actually think, oh, actually, it's really helpful to have somebody here with me on the first part of the run. So don't panic if you're feeling terrible. Your legs might come into it. You might get a second wind. Just keep eating, keep taking it one step at a time and breaking it down into small chunks.
Yeah, I think just so we're not going to go into all the high route, we're going to show you a couple of images of what it kind of looks like if you've not seen it. But provided you get there before the cutoff and you make it to the high route, the thing to think about is the first bit is literally a hike, as nobody is in reality running it, or I don't know many people who can run much of it. And that's kind of what it looks like. You can't really see how steep it is in sections. You can kind of see the runners just heading up kind of alongside the person here. It's at least an hour. An hour is a good time to hike up that, anywhere up to like about an hour and a half. You've got an hour 45 kind of cut off. That's more just a safety measure so that when you get to the start point of that run that you're actually making forward progress. Because if it takes you an hour 45, you're probably struggling. So they kind of have that in there. It's not difficult to get an hour 45, but expect it's going to take an hour plus to walk, hike, but it's a good opportunity to eat. And I think if you're not used to that, it can be a kind of problem from that bit.
Yeah, and just following on from that, so I was actually really struggling on fuel when I went up that section, and I totally did a U-turn in my nutrition. We'll get to my nutrition. My nutrition strategies aren't necessarily the best, but I actually had some rice that I asked my support crew to get me, and I was eating that on the way up, and that really helped me feel much better. So making sure you have lots of clothes for that section, and also lots of food, and your support crew has lots of different options, because a lot of you, well, for me, I was into unknown territory. I'd never done anything that long before. I didn't know how my body would react. So just being prepared for different scenarios.
Yeah, and I think something to note with the high route is quite a difficult type of rock to emulate. There's not many, even in Scotland, that are similar. Even the Cairngorms are different kind of rock as well. So it is a different kind of type of trail running. Certainly if you're in other places in Europe, it's a different kind of trail. But obviously if you can't wreck it, it's an issue. But just to give you an image of what kind of it looks like. So the one on the right is kind of the first section just after you've hit the first summit and you're running along, just to kind of show you there. It's pretty exposed, so if it's windy, potentially temperature being cold is a big issue. And if you're not necessarily running well or not able to run much, getting cold becomes a big problem, which Eilidh alluded to at the start. Is having more kit on is probably not a bad thing. You're probably better to have too much kit on kind of getting up that first section, and you can shed it later. And
the other thing is, you'll see the image on the right. I remember when I first did the recce before doing Celtman for the first time, and I knew Benny, but I kind of couldn't believe, oh my goodness, I have to do this after the swim, the cycle. How on earth is this possible? So it is something that's, don't underestimate it. That's all I'm saying. Break it down into small chunks, but definitely don't underestimate it. It's a challenge, for sure, to say the least.
Fun. And this is just one bit. It's probably hard to really see where that is, but there's a hill that you don't actually need to go over. You kind of skirt around it through like a kind of goat's track. It's really narrow in that bit. That's definitely one to be cautious of, because obviously if you go over that bit, you're going to go quite far down that hill, which you don't want to do. And then obviously we get to the kind of probably the main thing people are kind of speak about is the scree, descent off that scree. That's just kind of what it looks like. We're not going to go into too much detail on that. It's quite personal how you navigate down that. You're not running down that, I don't think, for most people. I wouldn't advise it. But once you get down this bit, there's a few options route-wise, but that's, again, what I would say to recce and find what works for you in terms of which direction you want to take. Some are longer, some are quicker, but again, make sure you're comfortable within that.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, so you've done it. You've crossed the line. So I guess some general training advice. And some people will approach Celtman as a race. Other people will approach Celtman for just a day out and enjoyable day with friends and family. One thing I would say is I think a combination of both of those views is a really good way to approach it. You want to enjoy the race, but you don't want to waste time unnecessarily. If you miss the cutoff by 5 minutes because you were standing having a chat with your support crew for half an hour on the bike, you'd be pretty annoyed. So being efficient on the day is something to kind of be mindful of. And then we'll go into this more, and we can have some time for questions. But for me, this next few months, this is what Celtman is all about. This journey where you're pushing yourself and you're finding new routes on your bike. You're getting up early. You're challenging yourself. Hopefully you've got your family on board and they're kind of supporting you in this. But I love the journey to it. The day is great, but you've got 4 months. You can't just be thinking about that one day. You've really got to enjoy the process.
Yeah, and just something I always speak to athletes about is obviously while the main goal for 90% of people who run the start line is to try and achieve the blue kind of t-shirt or even just finish, getting the white t-shirt as well is certainly an achievement itself. But some people don't actually account for actually getting to the start line is probably more important than being there super fit. And there's a lot of people that are probably enter the race, get out the ballot, and are super fit, capable of getting a blue t-shirt, but for whatever reason get injured or don't make the start line. So I definitely think if you can make to the start line with less fitness and get through the day, even if you get a white t-shirt and maybe you wanted the blue, you can still be happy that you've achieved something that's pretty epic. But if you don't get to the start line, your times are kind of almost irrelevant. And I said they're better to be started fit or miss the start line completely. Again, we've said they highly recommend seeing the course if you can. Obviously, it's not the easiest place to get to, certainly if you're kind of remote or a wee bit further away. But something that's quite important is it's prioritize the mountain is kind of what most people tend to do, but the first part might be quite a key component for that as well if you're tight for time. And then ultimately what Eilidh said there, enjoy the journey, and kind of got time for questions either in here or online.
So we are just going to go back to nutrition because there was a few questions on nutrition that came in before. So I definitely haven't mastered the nutrition at all. And when I did it the first year, I tried the peanut butter and banana sandwich. That did not work well at all. I was really sick. And actually a theme that I've had in all of the long distance triathlons I've done, I've actually been sick on the bike, and it's not great. I'm probably doing something wrong, but at the same time, if that does happen to you, don't panic about it. Just keep on drinking lots of fluids and trying a different form of nutrition. The water is salty, and if you're not used to that, I have this theory that I'm sick in Celtman because of this salty water, and particularly if it's choppy, you'll swallow a lot of it. So just be aware of that. Try not to panic if you're not feeling good or if you have a sore stomach. It's a long day, and hopefully you'll feel better. I like to have actual food rather than gels or powders in bottles. So this year, what's worked quite for me is jam sandwiches and on quite thin bread. I find it's quite easy to digest. I also have naked bars, my dad's favorite suggestion that we have in the UK, which if you're not in the UK, then they're kind of like dried fruit with nuts and dates together. Dates also a good thing to have, but it's a variety. I've also tried homemade rice cakes. My dad is here and he's shaking his head. So the rice cake is when you boil rice and then you smoosh it all together. That worked very badly. I was very sick all over the bike and my dad had to clean up. So I would say the rice cakes are not good. And obviously, if you can practice I do think the sandwich though, eating something that has some substance, especially when you get to the hill, you're going to want something. You've still probably got 3 or 4 hours after then, and I think you can digest if you're just hiking up. As for practicing, I guess when you're doing your long rides, this is something that you can practice having sandwiches, but don't be boring and not have cake or coffee. You know, you got to enjoy the journey. You can't just be having your Morton gels and your powder. That's no fun. So
how are you going to have a Morton move if you haven't had a Morton gel?
I did actually use Morton gels in the run at Norseman this year, and they did work really well. The run at Norseman was around 4.5 hours, so it's not as long as the Celtman run. And I think if for Celtman, I would still definitely try and have something else as well as just gels. But I found that they were pretty good to digest. But just trying different things and not panicking if you've got a sore stomach. And don't be anal with it. You know, be fun with it. If you want to have fish and chips midway through a long ride, just do it. It's a journey.
I've got a rash here. Use a McDonald's.
Boiled potatoes. Yeah, another thing is boiled potatoes. I did try them last year. They didn't work well for me, but I know people who salted boiled potatoes that work quite well. And I would say that the nutrition that you're looking at is probably more towards ultra running nutrition and what they have there, rather than the standard very, very quick Ironman nutrition.
And I think the key with that is practice it, and that's a key topic for, I guess, any race, but make sure you know it works for you. And it might not even work on race days, as Eilidh's saying there. You can practice it. It always works 90% of the time in training. For whatever reason on race day, it just doesn't work.
Don't panic.
But also having a strategy with a backup. I think that's something that people don't always account for. Like, right, I'm going to have my gels or have my bars or whatever they're having. And on race day, they need something else. Certainly salty peanuts is a good option. Maybe not on the bike. I wouldn't swallow too many salty peanuts on the bike.
That's the good thing about a good point about the salt. I actually this year started taking salt pills. So it's a pill format, and it's just got salt in it, and I find that really, really helpful, because you're probably not going to be able to take in as much salt, and drinking just pure salty water is not very nice. So I like to drink some water as well, so making sure I have the salt pills, or even as a backup, that's good. There's also these chewable salt pills, which are kind of salt sticks. I think they're called salt sticks. I also use them. I had about 50 of them in Celtman this year. Where are the salt pills? Where are the salt tablets? And they can be, if you're a supporter listening, they go missing. So I think I had like 4 boxes of them, and in lots of different things. And then, oh, we can't find the salt pills. I put the salt pills everywhere. So just be aware of the smaller things that you might need that might kind of get lost in behind some kit, because there's a lot of kit.
Yeah, and I think splitting all your food and stuff into separate boxes or bags in the back of your car or van is worth doing. Because what you want, either on the bike or the run, especially in the runs, obviously with your support runner, but with in the car or in the van, what you want is to be able to shout what you want. Like, actually, yeah, I was going to do a gel, but actually I want a sandwich. They can find that quickly. You don't want them having to spend 10, 50 minutes, because then you're gone. It might be another 10 miles down the road before they see you again. So having it easily accessible. And same with kit, have it in bags. So I want my big gloves or my big jacket. You've got that in there.
And that goes on to the support team as well. You might be really organized in where everything is, but in the race, you're racing, you need to have your support team knowing where you've put everything. It doesn't matter if you've got the best system in the world. If they don't know that system, then everything is just going to go crazy.
And I think with the support team, just with the nutrition side, it's something that I always emphasize to people who are supporting or athletes who have support, is make sure your support crew have their own food supply as well, because it's a long day for them. So you want to make sure that they've, certainly your support runner, you don't want them to have been up at 3 a.m. alongside you and having not eaten, and then having to hike up a hill with you, and then you have to drag them home because they've run out of energy, or using your salt stick on them because they're exhausted. So yeah, make sure your support crew have something prepared, or sandwiches options that they can nibble on throughout that kind of day is really important. And again, it comes back to, it's a long day for your support crew. And I think this is true for anyone I kind of coach or work with or speak to that do long distance training, is try and keep your family on side during the training, because ultimately on race day, you want them to be your cheerleaders. You don't want them to get to the end of the race and go, thank God that's over, right? Now we can get back to normal. You want them to actually appreciate your goal and epicness. And I think some people don't appreciate that. And it's like, thank your team as well is really important. It's a key part. You cannot race without them. So if they're peeved off, or you want to go back next year because you want to do better or you want to improve on it, and they're not on board with it, you're going to get a recipe for problems.
And I'm obviously very lucky. My wonderful support team who are in the audience tonight. Shout out. But I think one thing for me is, sometimes actually if you've got a short brick run, but you've been for a long bike and the dog needs walking, that's actually just as, if not more, effective as training. So I think approaching Celtman in a rigorous, very structured way isn't good for your mind, and I don't think it helps you on the day. Being flexible in your training approach, and if you have friends doing a bike ride which isn't maybe exactly what you want to do, but joining them for the extra company, I think doing things like that is really important, and will actually benefit you along the way, because you'll get to the race day feeling happy, feeling content, and feeling ready to go, rather than just which I feel after following a program for one day.
And just if there's anybody in the chat who wants to just add questions, and we'll kind of come through them as if there's, obviously hopefully there's questions, or if you want to ask it, you can kind of put your hand up and we'll kind of come to you. Is anybody in the audience, first of all, got some questions? Oh,
Gavin Prise, my dad. Right, what is it?
Does smiling make a difference?
Yes, I really think that smiling makes a difference. For me, this was most important. I really love Celtman. I love the event, and all my family are there. So for me, smiling Celtman is kind of it's a standard. But in Northman, I was kind of really stressed, and I made this conscious decision. I'm actually just going to smile, and there's people at the side, other support team, they're cheering you on, and actually just engaging with them, you get so much energy, and it really, really helped me along the way. It helps you break it down whenever you see people and you're giving they're giving you a cheer and you're smiling back, they cheer more. So definitely, even if you're not feeling it, try and smile. It makes a difference. For me, I find it makes a massive difference.
Especially if you're a sport team.
Especially your support team. No swearing at the support team. I don't think I've done that yet. Maybe
Well, your sport team might not be smiling if you didn't give them Midji nets.
But do try to be kind to your support team. They've taken up a lot of time to follow you on what is your dream and your goal. So just try and be mindful of that. And it's a day for them as well as a day for you. And I think the best thing about it is the support team. Look at this photo here. You finish it and you're all together and you've all achieved something together. You don't want to be finishing it and then to be thinking, well, she or he was a dick. Okay, we've got some questions.
So I'll just read it out. So I know you said wear everything uphill. Can you talk us through what that means for you?
So maybe actually not. I kind of probably said it wrong. I don't tend to wear everything uphill because I get pretty warm uphill, but it would be the top of the hill. So in your support bag, I think you have to have 2 long sleeve tops and a taped seamed jacket. The jacket that I had was pretty thin and I was wearing the 2 long sleeve tops. If we were up in the mountain at this, so this was low course, but if it was up in the mountain and the conditions was turned, that was not enough for me at all. I'd really suggest arm warmers, thick arm warmers that you would maybe have on the bike are really good and kind of easy to get on and off. I would consider having a thin down jacket as well. If you're moving slowly, you're going to want something that's a bit warmer to put on. Leggings, and they say you need to have waterproof leggings, but I would also consider having leggings in your bag ready. And any extras, your support crew might not like you for this, but you can put the extras in your support crew bag so that you don't have to carry them. But getting cold is not an experience. You're not going to enjoy it. And the other thing is actually gloves, making sure that you have good gloves. Innovate, I think, do waterproof mittens, which are really good. If your hands get wet, they're going to get cold. So investing in some waterproof like gloves, they can be expensive. Is something that I would advise. Okay. Okay. Could you please describe what you eat and drink per hour? Oh God. Half a jam sandwich, 5 jam sandwiches, 10 naked bars, bananas. Do you eat gels? Do not weigh my gels. Okay, roughly per hour. So I think I'm definitely wanting to eat something per hour. I break it down into where I am on the course, although it's probably better to break it down into time-wise if you're not sure how fast you're going. But I am definitely trying to consume, I think I'm trying to consume something every half an hour, but something more substantial every hour. So it could be half a jam sandwich, maybe, and then my dad's laughing. Jam sandwich. Drinking, I try to drink loads. For me personally, and this actually goes with training as well, I think if you get dehydrated, your body I find my body gets quite bloated, and I actually really don't recover well the next day from training as well. So for training advice, always overhydrate. If you've been out for a long run in the hills and you come back, drink, because that's one of the best ways to recover. In the race, I'm trying to, in the race, I did it on the day. Just try and keep drinking regularly and being mindful of how much salt you're taking, or if you've just been drinking water for the past hour, then you might need a salt pill. Okay, do you stop on the bike for food or water refills? So I don't. So I have a thing on the front of my bike for hydration. I had to stop. What I actually do is I sometimes take that off and I give it to my support crew. I can do that whilst I'm cycling, and then they fill it up and then we put it back on. That's there's no point in falling off trying to save 5 seconds. So if you do have one of those hydration things and you're and you're not confident, then I would say just stop, but maybe not at the bottom of a hill. because then you have to go up the hill with the hydration in. So just thinking about these types of things, where you want to take on the fuel is quite important. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you're not having no hydration for an hour. I didn't stop at all on the bike. Although other people, if you get cold, it is beneficial to stop, put some more clothes on, and then go again. What you don't want to be doing is getting so chilled or so dehydrated or whatever it is, or need to pee so incredibly badly that you're kind of ruining the experience. If you stop, be efficient in your timing. Time goes so fast. I'm always so shocked when I go for a bike ride and I think in just training, I think I haven't stopped at all, and then I'll look, oh my goodness, I was stopped for an hour in total. So just if you are stopping, be quite efficient with your stop. Maybe say to your support crew before, I'm going to stop up the road, I would like to put on this, and I would like this whatever nutrition. Am I just okay to keep plowing through? Full kit change in T1. T1 is coming out of the swim. So yeah, what was I? So I was wearing my bike. I wear my bike bib shorts and a sports bra underneath my wetsuit. I know some people wear tri-suits. But I find for me, I like to do a full change at T2 and wear kind of baggier shorts. It's a long day, and for me, wearing those disgusting bib shorts, which I've probably been sick all over and whatever, it's just it's worth it to kind of change the clothes. I also change to just, it makes you feel more fresh. So I would advise that, although I know Total Endurance have some amazing tri-suits which you can wear for the whole day. Yes.
So for the first part of the run, so T2 to T2A, so the hyper road, is there anywhere around Aberdeenshire that it's similar to that?
Yes, so I would say trails at Aboyne are very good. So Glentanner and kind of the back of Glentanner is Forest of Birse area, Balfour Forest. So there's a whole area there. There's a hill called Cornford, which I really, really like. That whole area is quite good because you've got some Land Rover trails, but then you've also got some thinner tracks, and you'll find I use Strava maps. It's quite good to have a look for routes. And you can often find some really narrow trails that are like through the heather, which are quite good as well to go. So that's my favourite place to train. You've also got Benahee for hills, but as the paths there are quite good, so I'm sure there are some narrow paths. Pressendye, it's another one. Out and about. Okay, Morven, well, a bit too steep for the first section. Thanks for talking. Do you use tri-suit or change into separate run? Yes, solo 0.5 this year. Okay, great. I think, you know what, I don't know, if I was doing the solo 0.5, I would still be considering a full change. It's a long day out. I know you probably wouldn't consider it because every second counts. But I would actually even still consider doing a full change. I don't like running in bib shorts, and I need bib shorts for cycling long distances. So okay, no more questions on here.
And certainly on, I guess, with solo 0.5, depending on how long you expect to take on the bike, it might be worth putting in a slightly thicker like chamois, so having a decent bib shorts if you're going to be sort of slightly slower on the bike or on the bike for longer. There's a lot of sitting up because of the elevation change on the bit around Applecross and the Bielak, so there is probably time gained is potentially worth being spent in transition.
Yes. Is there any more questions here?
Running poles.
Running poles.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Benefits.
Absolutely. Running poles for going up Ben. Definitely have them. They make a huge difference. They just take the weight off your legs, and I'll come to that question. They just take the weight off your legs, and they're great. So yes to running poles, and they're also something that you can easily forget about. So
did you train much with them
I didn't.
In the run-up.
I didn't. I probably could just train more. But just maybe taking them for the odd run is sufficient, and just knowing what height, because you can change the height on them. So knowing which height is good for you is important. So you're not fanning about.
So you get that top to give it to your support group.
Yeah, you give them to your support group, and they have to deal with them. Toilet stops. Okay, Fiona, you really. Oh, we've got another one. Okay, well, we'll go for the toilet stop. I'm gonna share it all. So, luckily, I didn't need to stop for any number twos. That was great. But make sure you get to the toilet first in the morning. This is all the lovely talk here. There's a few portaloos beside T1, so just kind of make sure you get there nice and early. I needed to pee once on the bike, and it was right at the end, and it was going down that hill, so I decided, well, I'm changing my clothes anyway, I'll just wet myself, which is really disgusting saying it out loud. But if you need the toilet halfway around the bike, I would definitely stop and go to the toilet, because you'll end up chafing yourself and it'll be uncomfortable, and it's not worth it for what's like 2 minutes. On the run, at that point, I need to pee like every 5 minutes. My future brother-in-law saw my bum far too many times for someone who's not related to me. So just be prepared. If you're a support group, be prepared. You will see sights that you have never seen before, and you don't want to see ever again. Okay.
Toilet roll in the run is
yes, actually, that's a really good point, because in my list of things for each part, I have a roll of toilet roll in each bag. So making sure that you have, it's also just generally good for spills or whatnot, but making sure you have lots of toilet roll available at all times is good. This is really Fiona, we blame you, Fiona. Okay, how bad are the jellyfish really? Do they sting? So I've not been stung by the jellyfish. Did you wear gloves? Yes, gloves and booties. Highly recommend them. Not necessarily just because of the jellyfish, but because it's freaking freezing. So they are bad. They are pretty bad, but they don't. Well, I was lucky. I haven't. I think a few people have maybe been stung, but maybe with the adrenaline, you're kind of not used to it. To be honest, when you're in there, you're doing it. You're not going to get out. So there's no point in panicking about them, because everybody else is in the same boat. You've got the kayakers there at the side. People have done it before, and you'll be fine. The best thing, the best advice I can give is to just not panic, and just try and focus on the person next to you, the person in front of you, and just keep moving forward. This year was very, very bad, and I did have a little bit of a panic at one point. But there's no point. It's just a waste of energy. You'll most likely, you won't be stung, and you can tell people stories afterwards. I survived the jellyfish, so
you can take antihistamine. I always have antihistamine on the T.
That's a good point.
I've taken
that's a really good point.
So take antihistamine an hour into the run, you're okay. You will recover. But take one with you.
So that's a really good point. We just had somebody saying antihistamine, having that ready at T1, if you do get stung. So great.
I was always scared. I was always absolutely petrified of getting stung in the sea around here. And I avoided the jellyfish at all costs. At 7.3 this year, there was obviously loads. Yeah. And you can't help but swim. And I got stung in the face quite a lot. Yeah. And it didn't hurt at all. It's just like
cold numbs it.
It's just like a little rash. And then you can just feel it on the bike. It's just like a dull sort of.
And it's okay. I got stung on the tongue.
Yeah,
that's really hard. You have to get antihistamine.
Yeah, but it's not as bad as I thought it was. It's certainly nowhere near as bad.
I got stung on the lip, and honestly within 10 minutes you don't even remember it, but I think it was a good point though, actually, because like doing solo 0.5 coming out of the water, the first thing that I came out was like, I wish I had an antihistamine, because I didn't know how I was going to react, because you should have said earlier, but I know like there was also like some line lanes as well. You saw them. Like, they attacked you. 2-1 to the face. They attacked you.
That definitely wasn't 2 minutes that was done.
I think the key for it is like, and obviously the forum things like that, people obviously like winding people up about them. It's expect they're going to be there. That is the reality of it. You're not going to likely not swim that swim without seeing quite a few. You might get lucky and there's not many, but there'll be some of them. But at the same time, don't fear them. I think it's relaxed. And they're a weird feeling. They're kind of hard. You expect them to just be like jelly. They actually hit us like a water balloon. Try and avoid them if you can, but if you end up in a shoal, is it a shoal? I think.
Yeah.
You
shitload.
Yeah.
Are there any more? No. Okay.
Any other questions in there?
I have this question. Somebody asked what training discipline means to me. And I think I'm probably quite unusual compared to most people. But, well, maybe not. I don't know. I obviously do it because I enjoy it. I really like cycling my bike and I really like running. So most of the time, I don't need to be disciplined because it's something that I want to do and I want to spend my time doing. But I think it's important to be aware of there's a point where I don't want to do it, but I probably should do it. And, I don't want to do it because I've done X, Y, Z before and I am, still here. And you're tired and you need a break. So just because you feel like you don't want to do it doesn't necessarily mean you always have to force yourself to do it. We only have so much mental capacity and you can only force yourself to do things so many times before you become stale, you burn out, you think, what is even the point in doing this race? So I would say use your matches, your training discipline matches wisely. And if you're not feeling like you want to do something, kind of try and have it. Obviously, most people have coaches to discuss, I'm struggling with kind of motivation or whatever. And it can mainly just come down to you're doing too much, or maybe they're saying, get on with it. But this for me, it's more of a lifestyle, this type of event, and changing your lifestyle to match this event. It's not about going and doing fast 10Ks on the road, or some people may like to do that and it may work well for them. But for me, it's actually just about getting on my bike. I finished a long day on my bike. I'm actually going to go for a 5K run as well. Or maybe I'm not going to do this a run, but I'm going to go for a walk. And trying to get volume in different ways, being creative about it. It keeps you fresh. It keeps you excited. Finding new routes on your bike, on your gravel bike, on trails, that really, really helps with. So what does training discipline mean to me? I don't know. A lifestyle. Training is a lifestyle. Training. It's what I really, really enjoy. So I don't know if that answered the question. Make it an adventure. The journey.
Any other questions?
Any other questions
in the chat? Anybody got anything else they'd like to ask? Or
is there any specific kit or clothing that you think was a game changer for you for the event?
The hood in the swimming
from Amazon.
The hood from Amazon, which has made it to Celtman twice and Norseman, so I think that hood should be free.
That's that fiver coming back.
I have a running injury that has taken me off running and trail running for a month now, and advice to stay motivated. Okay, you've got an exclusive. I have also been injured for quite a long time and I've not been able to run, and it's really tough. But I think just finding new ways of training, focusing on your if you're still able to bike, then great. You get so much strength from bike training. Celtman is not like it's not a fast marathon. It's not a fast race. You might even surprise yourself in that you're stronger from doing a bit more cycling. Swimming is also great cross training. I find it very boring. Aqua jogging.
Was injured.
Yes. I was talking to Jon from Norseman, the Norseman winner and Norseman record holder the other night this week. He was injured for 3 months last year and couldn't run until April, and said he was doing cross-country skiing. So it's really, really hard. But I think taking it day at a time, not trying to look too far ahead. For me, I make the mistake. I think, in 2 weeks' time, I'll be running and I'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. Don't think of that, because then you get to 2 weeks and you think, I still can't run. So just break it down into day at a time and you'll get there. And obviously doing the kind of physio prehab exercises, which are heat, is recommended as well.
I think just to add to that, on an injury side as well, is that injuries happen and you want to limit them, but if you are injured and limited in what you can do, it's the decisions you make between now and obviously race day or when your race is don't do anything that's going to jeopardize longevity on your ability to do things. I think a lot of people who do like this kind of sport or endurance are quite driven people and willing to sacrifice long-term for short-term gain. Now, unless you're trying to win and you're doing it for a job, it's different, but don't do anything silly that's going to take you out for years or
absolutely
you can't run
absolutely.
That's psychologically going to do more damage.
What's vertigo?
Fear
of heights. Okay, will you be okay? Yes, you will be okay. The pictures look terrifying, and the Xtri is very it is steep, but that's really the only steepest part. And to be honest, by the time you get there, you are focusing one step at a time anyway. So all these kind of fears that you have, they're going to disappear. They're going to melt on race day. So don't even entertain them.
There's not some support. The support is actually important for support. If you have a supported fear of heights, that's difficult.
Yes.
So it's better to have support that doesn't have that.
Yes.
Yourself.
So ideally, hopefully your supporters maybe experienced in this terrain.
It's difficult with somebody else to carry.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So choosing a supporter who can like actually support you and somebody that you trust is really good. Although my supporter in the first year was going to them the whole time, so but they're not my supporter now.
There's probably more.
You see what happened there? Didn't work out.
There's probably more benefit to having someone that you actually enjoy being with in terms of time, because you're going to be pretty grumpy and tired. So someone who can chat rubbish to you and speak just general stuff, almost take your mind off that. And certainly if heights are an issue, don't pick a sporter who also has a fear of heights. That would be probably not a good idea. But if you can get someone who's kind of able to chat to you and distract you and just keep you moving forward, making sure you eat it, that has more gain than maybe a runner who's a better trail runner or a better runner overall. 100%
agree with that. Swimming. We have somebody who has struggles with swimming, recommendations in Central Scotland or swimming recommendations in general. Total Endurance have an endless pool where you can do some technique analysis. So if you are close to Aberdeen, then it might be worth a trip up here just to have a look to see if there's any really big issues that can be easily solved with technique. I don't know where else.
I mean, I guess there's a few. I mean, Alan Cardwell's probably known one as well. I'd certainly highly recommend that as well. I mean, the key thing with swimming for most people is generally breathing and trying to use their fitness to swim faster rather than actual relaxed. And if you're relaxed and kind of controlled in swimming, you'll swim generally better. So without seeing you individually, but if it's a big issue and you're a good runner or got a running bike background, controlling your breathing, learning to relax is a kind of key component of that. And unfortunately, it's one of those things that's difficult to just learn overnight, but if you learn to relax.
Yeah, and another thing about swimming is that this is such a long day. If you are struggle with swimming and you lose 15, even 20 minutes on the swim, that's okay. You want to be, I think it's more important to be efficient going at a steady pace, because 15, 20 minutes over 12, 13, 14 hours, it's not really that much. So don't let your kind of, if one thing's not going very well, don't let it curtail everything else. Just try and segment things into different jars.
Yeah, and just put some general advice on that. Obviously, it's difficult to give specific advice to anybody individually, but while Eilidh's right, it's a small time perspective, but you don't want to be in the water for longer than you have to be. But it's not saying you have to go and swim 6-7 times a week. The reality is you're better putting time on bike and run. But being more comfortable in the water, being able to not get cold, so that includes if you're going to be in the water for a long time, having extra layers on is definitely worth doing. Keep you warm so that you can get out of the bike. And I think a lot of people last year had good swims, hit the air temperature, and then their body temperature dropped and they spent 15-20 minutes in transition getting cold. So if you're 10 minutes behind them but warm, getting out of transition, have a faster transition, you're probably leaving transition at the same time. You're not going to fix, if you're not come from a swim background and not maybe a strong swimmer now, reality is you're not going to make a massive difference between now and your swimming, and 10 minutes difference in swim is probably the case of a faster transition.
But come to Total Endurance. That's another 5 times.
But yeah, there's something that Eilidh mentioned as well, is like make sure you swim in cold water, at least a couple of times, or be in cold water as much as you kind of can within reason. it does pay dividends. Just the fact that your body adapts to it and be comfortable. But cold showers, ice immersion can be a little bit build up gradually. And Barry's put there, use a thermal wetsuit. Yeah, or base layers. Some of the base
Total
layers.
Endurance have them. So.
You know, you have to do a full policing. Yeah, thermal wetsuit's a good option as well. I mean, one of the downsides, I guess, to thermal wetsuits, although they are getting better, you lose some of the flexibility. But if the goal is to stay warm, it's worth a little bit getting warm.
Kevin, I would add to be able to breathe both sides, because when the wind picks up, you find yourself you can't breathe in one side, and because the wave every time you go out, you have to be able comfortable to just breathing do one side for a while and then one side.
Yeah, so just in case somebody couldn't hear, Rash mentioned about like being able to breathe both sides, and something I would advocate. I think someone with don't want to go into swimming or ends up becoming just a swimming talk, but it's not that you have to breathe bilateral in the sense that you need to breathe every 3 or every 5, but it's confidence to be able to breathe to either side. That's definitely a skill that's worth. You might still want to take your 2 breathing pattern or your 4 breathing pattern, but having the ability to swap sides because it's choppy, or there's maybe jellyfish on the left that you don't want to look at, so you can look away from them, or if it's choppy and you don't want to get a mouthful of seawater every time you turn to take a breath. So yeah, that's a big key thing.
Right, we've had enough of swimming.
We're off the swim. Bikes, so this is some general again stuff, just ideally that's where most of your focus could be. The kind of race for blue comes into and completing the race overall is generally time spent on bike is the most important. And say the run is not the same kind as a normal run, so you're better to get as much time on the bike as you can within reason. And something that's quite important, see this with a lot of people, is that if you've done an Ironman before, the intensity at which you're going to race the bike leg in Celtman is not the same as the intensity you would traditionally race in Ironman. It's a longer, the race in itself is about 25% longer for even the fastest guys. So for some people, it could be 50% longer than maybe what you've done in Ironman. So don't use any target powers or intensities you've used in the past for an Ironman leg. Dial that back by.
Don't use a power meter. Go by feel. Enjoy it. Enjoy the journey. You don't need the data.
It's like yin and yang here.
You don't need any of that. Go for your bike rides. Find a hill. Make sure you have a good coffee shop.
It works as well. I'm not going to dispute that. Nutrition and pacing on the bike's important. Nutrition we've obviously kind of covered a little bit. I say save some juice in your legs for the ride in from Garve. And again, don't neglect being able to ride on tired legs. I think that's quite a key thing as well.
Long rides. One thing about long rides, if you're female, saddles sometimes an issue. So make sure that you've got a saddle that you're comfortable with. Riding for a long period of time. That's something I find important. Total Endurance, all of good saddles.
Yeah, we said there, I think we probably don't need to go into too much for that, but it's a run hike. I think it's being used to like broken runs. So I think people often try and like do their run as like a continuous hour and a half, 2 hour run, or however long you're going. But being used to run a little bit, walk a little bit, run a little bit, and even like building like fart-like runs is really important. Just so if you haven't got hills, you can just mix it up. You can do it on treadmill if you have to. If you work offshore, for example, you can just mix it up where you'll change the treadmill gradient for 30 seconds, a minute, and just get used to walking a little bit, running a little bit.
Be creative and don't worry about your average speed.
Yeah, that's probably the key thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions online or here?
Yeah, go for it. On the run, would you change shoes, or did you bother changing shoes for the last 10
Yeah, so in the first year I did it, it was the high course. I did change shoes for the last 8K. I do think for me it made a difference because the trail shoes I had at the time were quite hard. But I would say you probably want to be running in your trail shoes for the first section and the second section. So I wouldn't advise a change shoe there. And also the other thing is it's an extra logistical challenge for your support crew to get the shoes there. So maybe have it if they can get road shoes there, great. But if not, then be comfortable in the shoes that you're running in. Do not try brand new shoes the week before. I did that this year and I had an infected blister, which was awful, Blistergate. So do not do that. Yeah, but Total Endurance also have trail shoes. Hokas as well, which I quite like. Okay.
Anything else?
From a support crew side of things, I've done it a few times now. Practice taking off their wetsuits.
Yeah.
Because they could be cold.
Yeah.
And not be able to do anything.
And if you can practice the transition before the transition, it's something that I would say is good. I hate to admit this, but me and my dad spent 2 hours the day before Gamma last year practicing. Okay, we do this, then this, then this. It just kind of means you're more relaxed as well coming into T1 because you know that your support crew knows what they're doing, and they'll be more relaxed as well, which is helpful. Okay, I think we're good.
Yeah. How do you so you obviously did really well on the first Celtman, and it was your first triathlon as well. And how did you feel about going back the next year? You know, and obviously you're driven to do well and you want to win. You know, how do you feel going back the next year with the pressure? Do you feel the pressure? Do you let it get to you, or how do you stop it getting to you?
Yeah,
and especially like this year as well. Because you know, you're 3 Celtman world champion, and you're coming back again to the same race.
Okay, so I think last year, if I reflect on last year for me, I was quite rigid and structured with things, much more than I was the year before. The year before, because I only found out I was doing it 7 weeks before, I had done loads of hill running and fun days. But last year, I even for me, which rigid, I mean, I changed my mind every day what I'm doing, but I had certain things that I wanted to get ticked off. And it was great, but what it meant was I was actually a bit overcooked by the time it came to almost race period. So I actually needed a 4-week taper because I got to 4 weeks before I knew that I had done enough and I felt tired, but I knew that all the training was there. So some training advice would be to don't be afraid if you take a long taper in. I don't think what you do 2 weeks before is going to make any difference. I was really nervous before it last year.
More so for the second?
Yeah, much more so for the second one, just because I knew how much. I know I always say, oh, I love the adventure and I love it, and I do, but I also put in a lot of hours last year. Although I had done everything and I had a pretty smooth training block or whatever, so I don't know, I was nervous, but I was very focused, and then now this year, well, I've had an injury and I'm not kind of going to do anything silly, so I'm just taking it step by step, and if that injury is a better, then that's okay. I want to be there, I want to be on the start line, but this is it's not it's not Kona, I'm not a professional athlete, and you just have to have that balanced attitude with it. And I think for me this year and going forward, I'll definitely be prioritizing doing stuff with friends, which maybe doesn't fit in the plan more, but because I think that is just, I do this because I want to have fun, and I've made so many friends from doing this who like to do the same things. So doing stuff together, I think is, I don't know, I don't think I answered your question.
You did.
Okay, there we go. Right. Okay.
So I think there was only one thing just to add to that, and then kind of we can enjoy the Friday evenings. But this is something general thing that's quite similar to what we've kind of alluded to, but something I'd always advocate is, I guess 20 weeks is kind of now. Sorry to scare anybody, but we're into kind of 20 weeks to go. Not it could be worse. It could be 16 weeks to go. But yeah, so just like putting together a bit of a draft plan on, like, so if you've done it before, you can maybe use some of that data, and it obviously is not going to be, and it's not necessarily what it's going to be. It's not like the script. It's basically just some questions that you have right now. So if there's like anxiety around certain parts of the course, anxiety about kit, things like that, you want to put that as a question so that between now and race day, you can start to solve as many of those questions, so that by race day, that draft plan questions get less and less. There's always going to be questions. That's what racing throws up. Will we have done enough training? Will we have got it right? Maybe not. But having a bit of a draft plan is going to reduce some of the potential stress that you might potentially give yourself. And even things like having a timetable, a couple of days of the race, and on race day, you know, swim roughly what you think your swim's going to be with a bit of a kind of window either side. And also the tasks that your support crew, you need them to do, because what you want your support crew to be there is to take as much of the stress of racing off you as possible. You're going to be nervous, you're going to be twitchy, and you're not going to be kind of maybe thinking straight. So if they've got the list, they can follow that list, and it takes the stress off them as well. because they know what they need to do because you've practiced it, you've planned for it, and it reduces that. And that sometimes in itself makes the race more enjoyable because it's basically go there and follow what you've kind of written down as a bit of a plan.
But don't plan so much that it's not fun.
No.
And remember, plans can change and be flexible and have cake on your bike rides.
No, that can be in your plan.
It doesn't need to be in the
plan. Is there any more questions before we kind of finish? Anything else? Hopefully everybody got something from that. I guess Eilidh's kind of yin and yang and approach, I guess, is definitely different. But hers works. She's got pro and record, so I can't dispute it.
He'd like to.
We'll see. Yeah, so hopefully everybody got something from that and shared some knowledge. If there's any questions following on, we can certainly kind of put them out there, maybe throw them on Facebook.
And you can ask me on Instagram, plug to the Instagram, but yeah, you can ask me any question and I'll give you an answer involving cake.
Yeah,
okay.
Hopefully.
Controversial. Figgy Farm Shop.
That's
no, park. No, you know what? Pie. It's a pie. It's not cake. It's pie. Mid-ride pie. Park near Dromore. Yeah, and then they do them at Aboyne as well. And sometimes Aboyne have a farmer's market where they do pies as well. So sorry, there we go.
Highlander Bakehouse and Crathie.
Highlander Bakehouse and Crathie. You've heard it all.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks everybody obviously for coming along tonight, and then everybody joined us online. It was kind of good to obviously see kind of hopefully people and say hopefully you guys got something from it, and ultimately thanks Eilidh for giving up some time and sharing some knowledge and explaining some toilet stories.
That was Fiona's fault. Okay.
Good, right, thanks guys. We will hopefully see you there.